In this corner, in top fighting form, coming to you every Monday through Friday at this time in thrilling, action-packed stories, America's #1 hero, world's champion of boxing and of fair play, from Ham Fisher's famous comic strip, Joe Palooka. Although Joe Palooka's New York friends have cleared him of the charges involving him and Blackie Ballinger's gambling ring, Joe gets involved in a murder in the town of Midville. Because he doesn't want to drag any of his Midville friends into it, he leaves the little town and thus becomes a fugitive from the law. He heads west and on a freight train meets a hobo named Rusty, who once saved his life. In just a minute, we'll pick up Joe and Rusty riding the rails. But first... And now, episode 27, Contrast. In a noisy, windy freight car, Joe and Rusty head west.
Yeah, Harold Manchevsky. That's a fine name, Harold Manchevsky. Good old Harold.
I don't know about this, Rusty. I mean, taking another fella's name like that. After all, he's passed on. It just seems...
Oh, don't worry about it. If Harold knew about it, he'd be very happy. After all, you're a fine boy. He was a fine man.
Well, it's good to know someone trusts you.
You know, I think you ought to let your hair grow out, Harold. And you better shave off that mustache, too. There's a slight chance that someone might recognize you even in Zinktown.
You know, Rusty, this is really funny. Here I grow a mustache and cut my hair in Midville so that they wouldn't recognize me as Joe, who was wanted back in New York for a gambling fraud. And now...
Gambling fraud? Well, you certainly seem to have packed a lot in your short career, my boy.
It seems so useless to try to explain.
Oh, don't bother. I'm on your side.
But I can't understand it. Things certainly went wrong these last couple of weeks. I never thought I'd be in a spot like this.
Roaming free and easy in a nice air-conditioned freight car? Could be worse.
I guess you have a point there, Rusty, and come to think of it, if all this hadn't happened, I wouldn't have come to know Mr. Woods, Ruth, and Mrs. McGregor, and you either.
Well, I don't know about these other people, but I'm not sure that the latter is any advantage at all.
Ha, you're a great guy, Rusty.
Oh, thanks, Harold.
I'm sure sorry about what you told me the other day. It never dawned on me that you had a wife and child and an important job once. But I should have known, the way you talk and all. You're an educated man, aren't you, Rusty?
Yeah, I'm an educated man. Oh, but that's another world, Harold. Another world I'd just as soon forget. It's easier that way. Let's think of the future, of the work in the zinc mines and all the money we're going to make. Yep, I think we're really going to like Zinktown. Made kind of a joke there, didn't I?
Well.
Yes, sirree. No more working on the railroad all the live long day. No more working on the railroad.
And so, their voices blended, Joe, Rusty, and the lonesome freight head west into the night. 1,000 miles east, two other men interested in Joe Palooka travel by train, only on a different kind of train, and for a much different reason. A sleek, long streamliner heads out of New York. Aboard it are Joe Palooka's friend and manager, Nobby Walsh, and Ken Berry, Midville's young county attorney.
Too bad we can't travel like this all the way, Mr. Walsh. Have to change trains at Cleveland.
Yeah, the streamliner is nice, but I sure wish we could have got a plane.
Well, I can't blame you for being anxious.
Say, I'm sorry for the way we treated you in New York, Barry. I didn't have any idea you were on the level. Jerry was so sure that you were just someone trying to take us for a ride. Yeah, it seems everyone's been trying to get something out of us since Joe turned out to be a missing hero instead of a heel.
I had a hunch the minute I saw Phil Boyle that he was Joe Palooka. But then he had this mustache and his hair was cut, and everyone was calling him Phil Boyle.
Yeah, I just don't know what to believe. I didn't want to believe Joe was involved in this gambling thing, and yet all the evidence said he was. I mean, you just can't deny certain things. Honestly, I don't know what to think. It's just one thing after another.
If only he hadn't run out.
Now, look, don't be so sure about Joe. Isn't there someone else who might have done it? Don't tell me he's the only suspect in the case.
Well, the local paper has called it an open and shut case, and Joe's it. But I don't know. It might have been anyone.
What do you mean?
Weasel Boland was robbed. His wallet was missing and his ring was gone. Anyone might have broken in to rob the man, but to kill him...
Maybe this weasel gave the robber trouble.
No, I don't think so. In that case, someone would have heard Weasel scream or struggle. No one heard a thing. No, Walsh, this shapes up as a pretty premeditated murder. And I hate to say this, but your boy Joe is the only possible suspect with a motive.
Wait a minute. If he was strangled, there must be fingerprints.
No, that's what we thought, but there weren't any fingerprints. The murderer wore gloves. See what I mean by premeditated?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
The old night watchman identified Joe as wearing gloves.
Well, it was probably a chilly night. Joe went for a walk. He had every reason for wearing gloves.
Sure. Not to leave fingerprints. I'm sorry, Walsh, but everything points to Joe so much, there just isn't any other conclusion I can reach.
Okay. But there must be other suspects.
Well, there just aren't.
Well, think, man. There must be at least some possibilities.
Oh, yes, there are a lot of possibilities. Everyone in Midville is a possibility. There's Mr. Woods.
Who's Mr. Woods?
Oh, he's a local hardware dealer. Really a fine fellow. Pillar of society, so to speak. Everyone looks up to Mr. Woods.
Then why mention him?
Well, he might have had a motive.
What do you mean?
Well, as commander of the local American Legion post, he was responsible for the carnival. He discovered Weasel Boland's exhibition wasn't on the up and up, and he was also angry because Boland wouldn't pay Joe.
Mr. Woods, huh?
Oh, it's impossible, though. He's the grandest guy in the world. Look, Mr. Walsh, you're going to have me suspecting my own mother pretty soon.
Yeah, where was she the night of the murder?
Oh, no, really.
Say, how about this old night watchman at the carnival?
Old Hiram? Oh, I don't think he has the strength to strangle a man like Boland.
Who else was on the carnival grounds?
Well, the one-round Dorch, that's Weasel's fighter. He was dead drunk sleeping in his tent during it all, though. Now, there were a couple of barkers in the wagon next to Boland's. Well, there were all the carnival people, but the evidence still points to Joe Palooka.
Yeah. Well, all I know is this, Barry. I'm going out to Midville, and I'm going to track this thing down. If I have to follow that carnival around the world, I'll do that, too. I'm not coming back to New York until this is cleared up. Joe was at a raw deal. He's been pushed around enough. He's going to get a chance this time.
Well, I'll do what I can to help you, Mr. Walsh. My job as county attorney is to clear this up, too.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks a lot. If I only knew where Joe was now. If I only knew where he was.
Well, there's no porter around to take our bags and nobody to announce the station, but if my calculations are right, I think we might be arriving in the vicinity of the great metropolis of Zinktown.
I can hardly wait. This Pullman isn't as comfortable as it might be.
Yeah, round about your second or third day out, riding the rails isn't as romantic as you thought. The cars are cold and uncomfortable, and the smell makes you want to quit breathing.
Yes, this isn't the life some people think it is. I'm cold and stiff. But what about this Zinktown, Rusty?
Well, the people are rough and tough. But I guess you aren't scared of that, are you?
Just so there isn't anyone there who knows about gambling frauds in New York or murders in Midville.
Nobody knows and nobody cares.
They don't read the papers, huh?
They don't read. Well, we get off at the water stop here.
But there's nothing here but empty spaces.
We got to head across the gulch. Got quite a little walk ahead of us. How do you feel?
Well, I think I can make it. How about you?
All right. Always good for a little jaunt in the night air.
Well, we better hop off if this is it then, Rusty.
Right you are.
Gosh, this is lonely country.
Yeah, there's the old Witch's Rock. This is the spot.
Boy, that looks spooky. A big hill of rock, and it really looks like a witch riding through the night.
This is strange country, Harold. There aren't many men out here, because not many men can make it.
What's that?
Just the coyotes crying. They're lonely, too. So is the old freight. Well, she goes her way, we go ours. Gotta keep the coat collar buttoned. It's cold, and it's a long walk to town.
And so, Joe and Rusty trudged slowly across the vast gray hills of Colorado, off toward Zinktown and the unknown. In just a minute, we'll tell you about the next episode of Joe Palooka. But first, in our next adventure, we find Joe and Rusty in Zinktown. Now hard at work in the mine, they run into an old friend of Rusty's and unexpected difficulties. Don't miss The Cave-In, the next exciting episode in the thrilling story of